Welcome to the next fly in the Remnant fly series. This is the Remnant fly number 3. It looks pretty simple, like a basic woolly bugger, but it is actually, it's a Marabou tail, and it is palmered Rooster saddle hackles. Looking through my box, just rummaging around, I actually ran across a bunch of Remnant tips that I have in brown Rooster hackle. Decided that I wanted to try and do something with them. This is very similar to a fly that a very nice lady by the name of Kathy Beck created a number of years ago called the Super Bugger. The premise is real simple. It's like a woolly bugger with a marabou tail. The body is basically made up of palmered hackles. Hers does not use the strung rooster hackle, but that's what I decided to do with this. So that was my thought process as I was rummaging through the remnants. Thought I would give it a try today at making a super bugger-esque fly, but the tail also is not tied in like a traditional woolly bugger. It's palmered in, and it resulted in a little bit longer tail, but I don't know. We'll see how it goes. So that is the Remnant fly number 3. I'll go ahead and get started. So I'm going to start the Remnant fly number 3 by placing this medium gold cone onto the hook. Place the point of the hook into the small end of the cone and push it on around the bend onto the hook shank. For this size hook, this is a Mustad 9672, or an R74 is the more recent number. It's about a 4X long streamer hook. You could use a large cone if you want, but I'm just going to go ahead and use this medium cone because it's what was in my Remnant kit. For thread, I'm just going to use a Uni-80 in brown. I'm going to attach my thread right behind the eye of the hook. This particular hook has a micro barb on it. They started coming out with micro barbs a while back, so you could either leave that on there if you want. I generally, as a course, my own preference is to mash down all the barbs for different reasons. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now. Now, as I said, this is kind of like a super bugger that Kathy Beck did, but I'm going to change this up a little bit. Rather than your standard woolly bugger where you take a marabou feather and just kind of clump it all together like this and tie that in for the tail about a shank length long, I want to actually try something and just see how this turns out. It may not turn out as well because the fibers and everything may end up being longer than what I want. But I'm going to tie this in by the tip and palmer this around. I have another feather if this one doesn't get me everything I want that I can tie in. This is similar to the Gartside soft hackle, which is tied with a palmered marabou. The stem on this is awfully delicate, so you kind of have to be careful, and that's why I don't know that this is going to work out as well, and even fishing it, it may not turn out all that great. And I'm not looking for a thick body back here or anything. I just want to see if I can get this tied in and get the same effect as a tail as I could if I just lashed it all in at once. I'm going to move my thread up to the front here to get it out of the way. advancing up the hook shank very far because I don't want to end up taking up most of the hook shank with the Marabou. This is kind of interesting. It's getting me a tail and a tail section, kind of like what I was hoping for. And hopefully in the water this will flow a little bit better. I'll get one more wrap. So I wrap that up to where I'm just about up to the point of the hook. We'll see how this looks. Actually, I think that tail's going to look a little sparse. Let me try one more wrap. Again, I have never tied in a woolly bugger tail like this before, and that's part of the idea behind these remnant flies, is just to take some pieces and parts of things and do something a little different with them, or to test out an idea about something just to see how it works out. So who knows? Get my thread back down. Down just a little bit on top of this to make certain it's all right along the hook shank real well, just about to the point of the hook. There we go, and smooth that off a little bit. So I got a tail that looks similar to a regular old woolly bugger, a little bit more body to it. So we'll see, kind of long. So I don't know, I kind of thought that might turn out long. Now, the regular super bugger has some flash in it, and I think you can even throw some rubber legs and all that stuff in it. I'm not going to put any of that in because what I was mostly interested in was these are remnants from actually doing a fly, the fly that I did last week, the Abbey, which has brownish hackle for the throat. These are strong rooster hackles, but these are the tips. These actually are probably long enough, but I didn't use that feather. But this is kind of what you have left over when you strip off the longer portions for the throat on wet flies. You end up, unless I was going to tie some smaller wet flies, I'd have some here, but you end up with these tips like this. And I've saved these. I got a bin of them around here somewhere from a whole lot of wet flies that I've done, with the idea that they could be used on another fly. And I just had the thought when I was rummaging through today that it would be kind of neat to make a woolly bugger type fly similar to the super bugger, which is usually tied with a barred hen hackle, a grizzly hen hackle. But on this one, I'm just going to use a bunch of these cutoffs. I shouldn't say cutoffs, but remnants from these rooster hackles. And the idea is just to go ahead and wrap these in. I want to try and use some shorter ones for back here because I still want to try and get a little bit of a taper. And we'll see what happens. So if you've ever seen a super bugger tied, then you know it is basically the whole body is made up of hackles. So all I'm going to be doing here is just palmering this hackle in, tying it off, tying another one in front of it, and then rinse and repeat. As you can see, you don't get super far up the shank with these. And that's kind of the idea, because you're really just making a real thick body of palmered hackle. So at this point, you got the concept. I am going to keep palmering this up the hook shank and keep going. So I got about 5 hackles in there, maybe 6. I'd have to look at the video and see. You'll notice that as I was wrapping that last one in, it started to go up in the cone, but then unfortunately it just got too far up and the last few wraps kind of laid all of this down, which is no big deal. I have another Marabou feather here, and what I'm going to do is just peel away some of the fluff off of this Marabou feather and then use that as kind of a dubbing. If you've never done this before, the fluff off of a lot of feathers, hen and rooster hackles and things like that, can be used as a quite effectively as a nice little dubbing. But what I'm looking to do is to get a little bit of a dubbing noodle here and just fill that area up right behind the bead. I'll get my thread through there a few times. You see it's kind of pulling it in and tightening it up a little bit. That's what I'm looking for. I just want to tie that in. I'll get 2 or 3 turn whip finish on there. You notice that near the end of the body there, I did stop and put some glue on some of those wraps, and that I probably should have all along. After each feather, just reach in and put a spot of glue where it was wrapped. It would probably help hold it together a little bit better. But I'm going to put a couple of drops right down in here, let that soak down in to the thread wraps up in that cone, holds that cone in place. Yeah, that's nice and firm. So hindsight, maybe a little flash might have helped this a little bit, but I found it rather interesting just palmering in the rooster, the tips of the rooster hackle, or I should say the leftover bits of the rooster hackle. It was kind of interesting. Schloppen, if you use that, which I often use Schloppen for the throats on wet flies, so I have a number of different tips of Schloppen left over. It would be softer, so you'd have a little bit softer body, but at the same time, this one here, the Remnant fly number 3, I think it's got a pretty nice full body to it. So all in all, I think that experiment worked out pretty well. This will go into that special fly box that I've mentioned before for all the Remnant flies, and it will be put away for next year, 2022. I will get out on the water on different occasions with all those flies under different circumstances, like for trout or for smallmouth or bass, largemouth or panfish or whatnot, depending on the flies. See how they do. Again, tail might be a little bit long, but that's kind of the way of it when you palmer that in. That's what you're kind of subject to, but it'll be interesting to see. So that's the Remnant fly number 3. I hope you enjoyed that. Thank you for watching. Thanks for joining me at the Vise today. I hope you learned at least a new pattern, if not a new technique, maybe a tip or trick here and there. If you have any questions about this fly or any of the techniques used in constructing this pattern, please leave them in the comments section down below. If you go to the trouble to ask a question, I'll go to the trouble to answer it. If you'd like to help dressed irons, please share this video with your friends and anybody you think that might enjoy this pattern. Until next time, remember, it's fly tying. If you're not having fun, then you're doing it wrong.